You're listening to The KYLO Show, the podcast where we talk about how to keep your loved one no matter what and why whole, healthy families are going to save the world. We're down to the last person in the irresponsibility cycle, the rescuer, aka the good guy. If you've missed any of the previous episodes around the irresponsibility cycle, go back and give them a listen. If you've been listening to The KYLO Show, I hope you've subscribed and give us a rating. It helps other people find the show so we can create more whole, healthy families around the world. All right, let's get to it. This week's episode of The KYLO Show is starting right now.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to The KYLO Show.
Hey there. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, we're excited. We're back at it, doing what we love, and we are going to be talking about the rescuer.
Yes.
So,
Part 3.
No, we're just starting it. So we've talked about all different things, but we're jumping into the rescuer in this session.
And the rescuer's got to have the same, 5 principles. Mm-hmm. What are they?
Which is being powerful people, having love over fear,
Yes.
having the goal of connection,
Yes.
and respectful communication, which is important.
You got one more.
And honoring healthy boundaries.
Nailed it.
Well, I did cheat. They were right there in red,
well.
But, I'm trying not to look at our prompts here as best I can to remember. But yeah, I think, talking about the rescuer, it's easy for people to think that they're helping by being the rescuer.
Mm-hmm. Best of intentions.
They do. They have the best of intentions. And it's, I think a lot of people get caught up in the, Jesus wants us to love people well. And so that means to take on their problems. That means to, be the one that has to help them identify the bad guy and help them understand that they're a victim and that, but they get sucked into wearing, that I remember in the parenting stuff you used to have, we say, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem for me, possible problem come up for you. But you show that photo of this, I think it's a bulldog, and this man sitting next to him, and they look like the same person.
That's it, because you can't tell the difference between the person with the problem and the person who doesn't have the problem.
Right, which is kind of what the rescuer does, is they take on a problem that was never theirs.
They do. And so, again and again, parents fall into this. Mm-hmm. Pastors get sucked into this.
Yep.
Employers, co-workers, friends. It's just a big hole everybody gets sucked up into.
Yeah.
But I do think primarily it's motivated by empathy, and compassion. People are really meaning well, like, oh my gosh, if there was something I could do right now to help you, I would do it.
Right.
It's kind of like pulling over on the side of the road because somebody has a flat tire. Like, oh my gosh, look at all these people just passing you by.
Right.
I will stop.
Yeah.
I will be that person. And I think it's that kind of heart, typically, until it becomes a dysfunction. But figuring out from the get-go what is help and what is not really helps.
Totally. So I think, how do you navigate the, looking to help somebody that is a victim, that you can see that, I know that People Helping People course, is trying to help you with tools to not be a rescuer, but being a powerful person and, kind of displaying what a powerful person looks like. How do we not get sucked in so much to that road that leads to the rescuer? What are good, maybe red flags that you can see along the way of maybe you're taking the wrong turn. Reroute.
Well, if you're exhausted, you're doing it wrong. If you're angry, you're doing it wrong. If the person keeps falling in the same hole, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So, there's some fruit that you should look for in yourself and in the people that you're helping, because if the tools that I'm using are keeping me while I help you, then way to go. And if the tools that I'm using are actually helping you get your self-control back, then ta-da, this is it. So let's go back to People Helping People. The Life Academy course, that is 101. I mean, that is like, okay, if you're going to be in there helping people a lot, and this may just because you have a crazy family. It may not even because you are doing it for a living.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it for a living, you had better have these basic skills. And if you are surrounded by chaos, smart move on your part.
So boundaries are probably a pretty big thing that you need to put in place to not be a rescuer.
Like 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, are you managing you and your priorities? Because if this is your spouse, that's a pretty intimate relationship. But even there, you can only give so much. You can only do so much. You can only change so much that introduces their opportunity. But it starts really with them. It starts with like, what are you going to do? And you can feel, we did the 5 E's. There we go. I mean, there's empathy. There has to be this like, okay, I see you.
Yeah.
I'm not angry at you. I care about you. I'm standing with you. That message, communicates that connection is my goal, but the respectful communication then begins with, I love you. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And that honoring healthy boundaries is, I am not going to work harder on your problem than you do. So show me what you're willing to do, and I now have to decide if I'm going to match that. That's the most I'm going to do, is match that. Because if I build a habit of going into your life, lifting up your hood, pulling your carburetor off, you just sit there while I do all the work on your motor, and then go, okay, turn it over. And they go, I think my battery's dead. Like, oh, let me go get my battery. Okay. So I bring my battery. I bring, eventually I just you're in my car and I'm driving you around.
Right. Do you think it's easy, like as you're describing this, I'm thinking about married life and even Ben and I's own years of marriage, where when I think I've become a rescuer, which looks like the kids or the housework or the bills or just taking care of all those things, but not feeling partnership, I, instead of asking questions and, bringing any kind of empathy, I then get more and more frustrated or exhausted, like you kind of identified. And then it feels like it's easy to turn my victim into my bad guy. Is that kind of like, can that happen? I mean, I could see in my life with Ben early on that I would become so frustrated that I have taken on all these jobs,
Well, you're the victim.
And then of
all that irresponsibility on his part.
So my rescuer becomes,
he's the bad guy.
Yeah. So it's just like this crazy thing.
And so you say, I'm the victim here, rah, 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 rah. And then you cross the line of disrespect, and now he's the victim.
Yeah.
He's the victim, and you're the bad guy. There are no rescuers.
Yeah, no, it feels like it's just a victim and bad guy.
It's just a tennis match.
It's
the ball's
completely
the victim.
is what I saw. If I go back to the early years of our marriage, that was it. It was just practice of who's going to be the victim today and who's going to be the bad guy.
And so then you go call somebody and say, and they go, are you kidding me? I'm going to talk to Ben. I'm going to tell him what he's doing.
Yeah.
He needs to man up. Yeah.
Please.
And here comes the rescuer. The rescuer gets triangulated in through the victim going, help.
All of that.
So, maybe you tell mom.
Right. Probably.
And she's like, and so she comes and tells me, and pretty soon we're all.
This never happens, guys. This is not real life at all.
So let's just say somebody actually ends up involved, and there's your rescuer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's again, good intentions or willingness to help turns into this distorted cycle that you get stuck in.
And so, chances are, if this is a cycle for our kids, we are going to get involved. We are going to move towards this, but we're going to move towards it with what are you going to do? Not, okay, let's hold court and
Right,
figure out
totally.
who the bad guy is and who the victim
Yes.
is, and then find sufficient punishment for the bad guy. Because that's usually the rescuer's approach is, okay, I'm going to identify the
judge.
bad guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're going to hold court until the bad guy confesses, and then we punish them. And that should do it. That should be the end of it, is the bad guy has been identified and punished. A lot of people call that marriage counseling.
Oh, yay.
Where one of them pleads the case, the other one essentially looks guilty and probably is, and the counselor is the rescuer, which is, let me tell you what to do. Okay, here is your punishment. You have to do these things. Yeah. And the bad guy, if they feel bad enough, they submit and they do the things that they're told to do, but they don't change because they didn't repent.
Yeah. And I think that's, Ben and I were working with a couple recently, and I would say the wife had been the victim for a long time. And she finally got her husband in there, and he's the bad guy. And I really think she was hoping we would be the rescuers and to confront. But our goal was really asking lots of questions, and what is yours to own in this, and what are you going to do different, and what do you want your goal to be? Because if you don't have the same goal, this is never really going to work. But it was really hard for her with those questions coming to figure out what she owned. And a lot of what she owned was participation and permission. And I think that wasn't good enough for the husband, because he's like, there's more than that. And sure, I think there's disrespect that's gone both ways, but it is kind of interesting in our working with family coaching how many people come and are looking for the Christian approved rescuer.
So when people contact you guys for family coaching, how often would you say triangulation is a bulk of it?
Oh, man. Well, I usually get just one side pretty often, and it's usually a victim. So I would say up there with 90%.
90% of the time, a victim reaches out and says, help, and they find you. Instead of a rescuer, they find somebody who's going to say, are you powerful? Do you want more love than fear? Is connection your goal? Do you know how to communicate respectfully? Do you know what your boundaries are? And they are, what's the response to, do you want to be powerful?
Shockingly, not a whole lot of really positive response.
It's kind of...
It's frustrating.
It's pretty stunning when step one is, what are you going to do about you? And they go, oh, no, that wasn't the reason for this call. Yeah. It was, what are we going to do about them?
And that's probably the most painful part is, I'm not going to work harder on your problem. And I have lots of ideas of what being powerful looks like, and how I in situations, role-playing, language, but when you leave the call, it's completely up to you. So then we get back on a call, I'm like, how'd that go? Well, I don't think that's going to work. I just think you need to talk to them, which a lot of my time with people is trying to help clarify what a powerful person looks like. I feel like that's a lot of what we spend our time on is, my favorite is when they discover that and they go, oh my gosh, this is me. And then I'm like, okay, let's take this mountain together. Like, I feel like I can help you here, but
it's step one.
Until we can get there. And I think that's the hard part of when you don't have a community that knows how to be successful of not just being a rescuer, is you just get used to going to the next rescuer. And that's the cycle that just keeps going.
Yeah, and that situation's not going to change. When I wish I could count how many times people have said, you're not like a regular counselor. So no, I'm really expecting things to change, and I'd like to get this through as fast as we can, and even you're not like a regular pastor. Like, okay, well, I'm sorry, but here's how this works.
Yeah.
Until you decide to manage you and be wise with that, I promise you, you can just get more of the same.
Yeah.
You're trying to control that person out there.
Yeah. Well, I think, if you're stuck in the rescuer phase, going back to those 5 E's from last week, and then if you're exhausted, if you're angry, and if, you've noticed that your problem and their problem look a lot like the same.
It just keeps going.
Maybe you've been sucked in, and I would encourage you to get out of that. So, but, that's good stuff. I like this series. It's kind of a little touchy.
Yeah.
It's a little hard for people,
Yeah.
I think, but it's really good. So, but we're going to take some questions now, and I'm excited about that, and we'll jump into that.
Great.
You heard Danny and Brittany talk about Life Academy courses, People Helping People, and Successful Confrontation, and even our newest Life Academy course, Unpunishable, coming out next week. If you're wondering what that is or how you can get access, you want to go to lovingonpurpose.com and click courses. You can learn all about the Loving on Purpose Life Academy and pick a course to get lifetime access for $49, or you can get every single Life Academy course for just $7.99 a month with Life Academy All Access. Again, to learn more, go to lovingonpurpose.com and click courses now.
All right, our first question that we have comes from Allie.
Oh, good.
Hey, Danny and Brittany, it's Allie from San Diego. I have a question for you about two helpers in a relationship with each other. I'm a 1 with a 2-wing on the Enneagram, so my helper-fixer personality is strong, and the guy I'm in a relationship with took care of his father, who was ill for many years and now is training to be a doctor, so he's going to be a professional people helper. And I think both of us have recognized that we have attracted people in our lives who have put responsibility on us, or we've signed up for responsibility that probably really wasn't ours to carry. And so we've been volunteers and recruits for responsibility. And I'm just wondering if you have some advice for how we can move forward with some healthy awareness and some healthy boundaries so that in our relationship we are not burning out or getting pulled into the rescuer role and really not helping like we want to. So I'd love your advice. Thank you so much.
Great questions. Yeah,
So those are two rescuers that are in a relationship together.
We are professionals. We are good at this, and we've attracted ourselves to ourselves in hope, really, of somebody relieving all the responsibility in the rest of my life, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I think bravo for the awareness of the trap you could be walking into. I think that helps tremendously on I've started to give away my power again. I think that awareness to it is really helpful to start with, because I think that's part of what a lot of people don't even realize, that this is their cycles.
She mentioned, her Enneagram numbers, and we lock onto DISC stuff and Strength Finder stuff, and those are things that help identify motivations, and then also, why do I keep engaging like this? Not that it's bad, but I keep doing this thing, and you can identify somebody's rescuer really based on awareness of who they are and how they will predictably engage.
Which, I mean, like Allie, I am a 1 with the 2-wing as well. So the tendencies to creep in on that, I see a problem with a family that is close to us where there's struggle and there's pain, and I have to weed through jumping in.
And you're a high D.
And I'm a high D. And so I have the tools, I have the knowledge, I feel confident. So I want to jump in and be the tribe leader and
your
create
number
order.
one command with
Exactly.
communication.
Just
boom.
But what happens when I jump in there is that nobody was looking for a tribe leader. And so now I am a crazy bad guy.
You're at war with the tribe.
Exactly. So I think that awareness of really paying attention to, do they want help? You know, because for that makeup is, I have the best intentions, and my heart for their getting out of that chaos is large, but if there's no request for help, I know that my energy will be wasted, and I'll actually make more distance in this friendship or relationship than I actually ever wanted to begin with. So I often walk on this, I feel like a balance beam, and I had to be careful because I could just jump off because I'm like, oh, I could help you. But my track is not, that's not an open door for me yet. So I think I would say being patient too when there's really an ask for help.
And I've watched you grow your empathy. You know, like
Yes.
you want to engage. You do want to engage and solve that problem because it looks like it's hurting your friend. And yet your empathy is probably the first place to go and to camp there for a while. And like, oh my gosh, oh geez, oh gosh, oh that sounds horrible. Oh that must have hurt. Oh my gosh, oh geez, and just kind of crawl in there and stay there until that person indicates at all that we're doing more than venting right now, processing, because that's for a rescuer as well. And even an agreement between husband and wife is like what I say with Sherry. I say, are we processing? Are we venting right now?
I think Ben has taken that on.
Or are
as
we
well.
solving a problem?
Yeah.
Because I need clarity as to which skill I'm bringing. Because if we're venting, then it's all empathy, baby. It's just oh, and then what'd you do? Oh my gosh, I see you. But if we're solving a problem and I do that, then she's like, well, where are you? I thought we were
Just talking.
venting.
Yeah.
No? Okay, we're problem solving. And so now I'm switching gears over here. Now I'm part of the tomorrow in this thing.
Yeah. So I think for Allie, it would be the camping out in empathy.
Super, yeah.
Yeah.
She too is a pretty high D, and but she's a C in front of that, which means that her 1 and her C. It's like her moral obligation to get
help,
it perfect.
yes.
Like ooh,
Right. And then, all the different breakdowns of the 1. But I think, again, if she camps out in that empathy place and then waits for the invitation or clarifies it, like you said, are we venting or do you need me to help? I think that helps.
And she is waiting for a powerful person to show up, because if she keeps crossing that boundary, then he will move away from what is his, because she's super capable of just gobbling it up. So she's going to have to keep the empathy high, and that. So how can I help you, or what are you going to do? That's got to be the first thing she enters with.
And he's going to have to learn how to do the same thing.
Yeah. And then they're going to have to learn how to communicate what they need.
Which is,
read my mind. I'm over here suffering.
I don't want to
Read
give you my
mind.
needs. I don't want to be too much. I don't want to, all of that goes in there with 2 more helper personalities is I don't want to be too much for you. So being able to communicate your needs is pretty crucial.
Pretty good.
All right, Allie, great question.
Yeah.
Next question comes from Jordan.
Okay.
Hey, Danny and Brittany. I want to thank you guys so much for doing the KYLO show. I'm absolutely loving it. I have a question. So I know I'm real quick to jump into the rescuer role and try to fix other people's problems. I'll even make them a list because I love lists. How do I stop this? I know it's super unhealthy, but it's almost like a need I feel on the inside of me to help. Maybe because I'm a pastor's kid, and maybe because I'm a 1 on the Enneagram, and I was trained this way. Help me, please.
What is it with the ones and 1, 2? We're really a show's about my internal world. Yeah. Well, I like lists too, Jordan. I leave them for my children all the time. But I think it's a similar dynamic to Allie's question. Even is the waiting for the invitation. Like I think I had a conversation with you last night about seeing a problem and trying to figure out, can I jump in? Because I see a problem and I see this problem could get really big and not fun for people I love, like really soon. And it's a touchy situation. And okay, all of my rescuer to give input and help is just lit up inside.
Yep.
And there has been no ask though.
Yeah.
And so I just look like a controlling dictator.
Yeah, or is someone overly involved in somebody else's problem. And that is, you're just going to keep circling back to, how did I become the bad guy? And it's that, I forget the address, but Jesus says, don't cast your pearls before swine or dogs, depending on which version or which gospel you're in. But he says, because they'll disregard it. They will trample what you brought underfoot into where they live, right? Yeah. And we have a pig, so we know where they live, and it's not pretty.
No.
And you trample that in, and then they'll turn and devour you. And so the sequence is, I made a mistake and I offered pearls where they don't belong, and then I now have to live through the disregard and feeling hurt at the dishonor, and then I'm going to be the bad guy. Yeah. So, Jordan, it's great that you want to write a list, but you might ensure that you have somebody who has a problem before you start working out a list. Or maybe you write a list, you just don't send it.
Just don't send it. Notes are great for that.
Maybe you just say, write it down before you send it. Be sure that you check to see if you're dealing with somebody who has a problem or is just complaining.
Yeah. And I think, I'm really grateful for the community that Ben and I are around, because we all have such high value for feedback. And so there's lots of times where we just kind of check in with everybody, like, hey, is there anything you need from me? Or is there anything that you think that should be adjusted or you could give input to? And I think that's a practice that we've created amongst our community, which helps to invite that opportunity. Yeah. And so if you can, and you have a community that's willing to do that, that might be a practice that you put into play and lead by example. And maybe even say, like, hey, I was thinking about just really opening up feedback because I want to grow, and you're welcome to join me, but I'm going to be asking. But that could be something that you start practicing to see if your community could, because I feel like our community is usually who we want to help because we are so invested in, and they're usually, our family and our community are usually those first places that we're trying to help with, but without that relationship, it doesn't always go well. So,
do we have time for one more?
Well, let's see. Patrick, what you got for us?
Hi, Danny. Thanks for the opportunity to ask a question. So, when confronted with difficult situations or people, church friends often advise me, Ephesians 6:12, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Sometimes this feels like a cop-out to me, based in fear, making the spiritual forces of evil a catch-all bad guy that lets us blame something outside ourselves rather than being powerful. But I'm not really sure. Is this scripture being quoted incorrectly by folks in this context? And can you give this scripture some context in relation to being a powerful person? Thanks very much.
Okay, Patrick. I guess the first thing I'd be wanting to know is, are the people quoting that conflict avoiders.
Yeah.
Because if they have a pattern around them of staying out of disagreement, conflict, maybe lacking the courage to wade in and hold their friend accountable or whatever, or tell them the truth about how they're experiencing them. If that's the pattern of those people, or even the culture, because sometimes the culture is so conflict avoidant, save face, don't be that person.
Right.
We know that person. Don't be that person. So if that's going on, then I would say, yeah, that's definitely a misapplication of that verse. But it's very true. It's very true that it's not flesh and blood. It's not there. That's why we don't have a bad guy. We have somebody probably banged up and wounded, or somebody that is got a bunch of unmet needs that haven't been communicated yet, or whatever. But we don't have a bad guy. Fear leads me to villainize someone, separate them off, and get rid of them.
Yeah.
But love gets me to move towards them with the goal of connection, and to find ways to chase the fear away while we work through reconnecting and strengthening our bond.
Yeah. That's great. I think even in the last week's show, you talked about another scripture about just kind of going to your brother,
Matthew 18.
And so I think that's the other scripture, is that the Lord's saying we are meant to have confrontive conversations, but they're also supposed to be rooted in love, where we're moving towards and not avoiding based in fear. So
Exactly. So I've had some we wrestle not dropped in my world, and I say, well, let's go ahead and speak the truth in love to one another.
Yeah.
Ephesians 4, and let's be sure that we have worked through that before we start blaming it on the devil.
yeah.
Because, the devil's real. The devil's real. Got it. Guaranteed. Don't misquote me on that. But we have a lot of work to do between ourselves. I think in many instances, the devil's not even necessary, because people are so jacked up with fear. All they really need is to wear their worst self around and feed the fear.
Yeah.
And guaranteed things are not going to go well.
Well, thanks for that, Patrick. Another great question. All right. Well, we're going to move on to our testimony.
Awesome.
All right, you heard me talk about it. You heard Danny and Brittany mention early in the show. Unpunishable, our brand new Life Academy e-course, is coming out August 23rd. That's less than a week away. So here's what you can do. You can wait till it drops and go get access for $49. That gives you lifetime access to the course and all of its updates. Or you can go get an all-access membership today for $7.99 a month and cancel anytime. So use it when you need it, and if you're done with it, cancel. But here's the deal. We drop new courses all the time, and if you get access right now, when Unpunishable releases on Monday, it's going to drop right into your all-access account. That's really cool. So if you want to learn more about the Loving on Purpose Life Academy, go to lovingonpurpose.com and click courses now.
All right. So our testimony comes to us from Alicia.
Oh, good.
I have learned so much through KYLO. I love this message, this book. I promote it everywhere I can. But I think one of my favorite things that I've learned is that I'm in charge of me. I'm a pastor's kid and am a pastor now. And learning that my responsibilities are mine and others' responsibilities are theirs has been so freeing. I remember one day I was running late to a meeting at the church, and when I got there, everyone was standing outside because the doors were locked. And when I got there, someone looked at me and said, "Well, finally you showed up." And they had this tone being funny, but I looked at them and said, "Oh, I'm not in charge of this. I'm just attending." And when I said that, they looked at me like, "Oh, wow. I'm trying to give you someone else's responsibility." That moment was so freeing to me because I realized I'm not in charge of them. I'm in charge of me. And I also shared a boundary or showed a boundary with them that I'm not taking on someone else's responsibility. That day was really big for me and was a huge win.
That was the day that she decided to not let someone else control her responses.
Yeah, and I think probably being maybe the pastor's kid, I'm assuming it's at their church, that you're defaulted with, well, this is your fault.
Yeah, somebody in this family is responsible.
Right. And so I'm going to voice my frustration at you, and no, that is, it's not fun to, kind of be poked at publicly and then.
Well, it's a kind of a passive aggressive, veiled, ha ha ha, you are the pastor's daughter and I could get myself in some trouble here, but ha ha ha, I had every expectation that you would have been here on time and opened this door.
Yeah, or you're responsible for opening this door or any of that. I think it's, discovering, owning, and being able to walk out being powerful is a very freeing experience. Mm-hmm. To be able to handle situations, we've already discovered my 1, 2, and my high D and command and all the things that I can be intense about. I think, lacking self-awareness, I can turn into a bad guy really fast because I display that anger, and instead of tapping into that, really figuring out what emotion's truly going on with me, and then becoming a powerful person and then an assertive communicator to something that I need and setting a boundary, which has played out more in my later years of life than maybe the early years. But I have a similar, it's not really exactly the same, but I remember in high school, the first time I set a boundary with someone that seems like I would have said my bad guy, and the shift that happened even in me as to at 16 being able to have a boundary with another peer and then respect it, and how changing that felt to, wow, I can have my peace and not be in turmoil over whatever you're going to do.
Yeah, well, it almost takes a situation, a highly emotionally charged situation, for you to manage yourself to realize, oh my gosh, there's 2 people here.
Yeah.
I thought there was just one person here. And it was either me trying to get my way or them trying to get their way, and the battle to resist. But there's 2 distinct decision makers here. We do not function as one unit, even in a marriage. There are 2 distinct decision makers. That's why there has to be so much respect for the connection so that we can move together. However we decide, we can move together. But if I think that we're both me, then I will manipulate and intimidate and dominate to get what I want. Yeah. Or you will. Yeah. Because you don't recognize that, okay, we have to figure out what we are going to decide. And it's not always agreement, sometimes it's, well, here's what I'm going to do. What are you going to do? Here's what I'm going to do with our son. Yeah. What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to do what my father did to me that I said I'd never do. Here I go. You're like, oh, then you and I now have a problem because of the disrespect that you brought to our son. So now we have a disconnect over here. And that is how we stay out of, I'm going to rescue my son from his parent. Yeah. Is, here's what I'm going to do. What are you going to do? All right. Well, that brings a consequence, either connection or disconnection. And now we got 2 problems, not just the son. Now we have the son and the parent. Yeah.
I was thinking about, you were talking about, there's not just one person, there's 2 powerful people. I think of Smeagol from Lord of the Rings. It's just this internal,
Always, yeah.
It's just really kind of chaos. And if you don't realize that you're powerful and free to not this other person's opinion or frustration or whatever they're coming at you. And it is really just kind of identifying, what am I going to do right here? So, I think being a powerful person, like Alicia was talking about, is all about asking yourself some questions in the moment. What am I going to do right here? And, you have lots of opportunities to be a victim, be a bad guy, or be assertive.
In that situation, Alicia, she could have been the victim and her own rescuer.
Totally.
And but she didn't have a bad guy.
Yeah.
She had a misinformed guy.
Yeah.
And, and she just addressed the misinformation. She just said, "Hey, here's what's going on." And he's like, "Oh."
Right.
And so she wasn't a victim of his rude, disrespectful comment and then comes over the top to rescue herself. She's instead just like, "Oh, well, I'm just attending."
Which I
like
think
you.
In that moment, anyone that might be a rescuer would then could try and rescue Alicia, and make this person the bad guy by having a sidebar conversation and saying, "I can't believe they did that. They didn't need to say that in front of everybody."
Or do that to him.
Yeah. So and then
she fires a cannon, into him and says, "How dare you treat our family like we're supposed to be superheroes or whatever."
Right. Which is just so crazy how quickly we can start this cycle. So just if you put yourself in that position, what would you do if you were Alicia's friend, or what would you do if you were this person's friend? How would you internally view that situation? Because there's an audience that now have a choice to make as well as to if they're going to participate in triangulation or if they're going to be powerful people and let those two figure it out. I think that's a lot of what the church gets their nose in, and it is in somebody else's business pretty quickly.
It's you expand this into social media.
Oh, yes.
And you look at how many people misinterpret and respond with their whole heart. I misdiagnosed. Let me misprescribe this situation, and then I'm so far into it. There's no way I'm backing out.
Yeah.
I'm going to just keep justifying what I'm doing. Like, oh, Lord, help us.
Oh, man.
Help us.
Yeah, I think, again, we talked about it before, but being a powerful person really is that first step to changing. And I think, in my experience of working with people, when I'm hoping that they discover that they've not been powerful, and we're in this, time together, and I'm asking hard questions, I think that the goal really is for moving from powerless to powerful, because that's when I feel like you're stuck in traffic and you're like hit red light after red light after light. I feel like you get green lights after that. It's it's a different experience to the exchange, and really getting out of this process is just chasing after being willing to take responsibility.
And it's, being powerful teams up with the goal of connection. Because if you're just being powerful and you're just saying, "Here's what I'm going to do, here's what I'm going to do," without any regard with how it affects the people around you, then you're just kind of a selfish jerk. But if you are paying attention to, I'm choosing love over fear, and my goal in my relationship with you is connection. So I'm making decisions not to manipulate you, or I don't need your agreement about what I'm going to do, but I am thinking through how is this going to affect our connection, and maybe it's going to lead to a disconnection. I get a lot of feedback from parents of adult children who say that could you address the setting of boundaries that feels like rejection? And I can see that happening. I can see an adult child who finally doesn't have to be around their parent. They live in another city. They're married. They got pretty much all their needs met. They're financially set. There's really nothing but honor connecting them to their parent. And the parent is, coming over the top with rescuer, let me rescue you from yourself, or let me tell you how to raise your children, or let me tell you what you should do about your spouse. And that leads to all kinds of problems in the house for that child, that adult child. And they just go, boom.
Yeah.
And they set this iron door limit with that parent. And that parent is confused and totally powerless.
Yeah.
They feel totally powerless because they have been rejected. There's no end of reconciliation. There's no way to reconcile this mistake. And the adult child just feels like, you've never listened to me my whole life. And I've had it. And those parents are not realizing that they have a mess that they never cleaned up with their child, let alone their adult child, let alone with the new in-law.
Yeah.
And so the pile of anxiety that is sitting there for this parent to address is a mountain. And unless they say something to the effect of, I've obviously hurt us. I've hurt your family. I'm so sorry. I don't ever want to injure us. I want to clean up this mess. What do you need? And, they can throw that out there, and depending on the adult child's skill level, they can handle it really well, or they can say, oh, this is my opportunity to punish you, and that's no fun. So that parent just has to listen better than the child is communicating and all the things we've talked about. But sometimes it is rejection. It's not a boundary. And I don't know what you can actually do about someone's rejection besides pray that God changes their heart. But for the adult, or for the parents that have adult children that are experiencing that, please check and see if you have a pile of unaddressed anxiety that the child is reacting to from the time they were 3. That just, it was a pattern of dominance and disrespect and dishonor that now they feel fine turning it around.
And I think if the parent does find that there's something there, and attempt to repent and, communicate to reconcile, I think the child probably feels scared to lift up that curtain.
Yeah.
So there is the struggle of, maybe I can create a window, and can you handle a window?
Not a door.
And so I think that there are phases to, if you've had, that's the only way that you feel like you're able to have a boundary, is this hard iron curtain, is when your parent has repented or has brought up like, oh, I realize that I have all this stuff that I've done and I'm so sorry, I don't want that. Maybe the first step you can take is putting a window in the wall and see how they handle the drive-up window, and if they can't handle that, then it doesn't get to open very often, and if they handle it really well, maybe it becomes a door, that you get to still lock if you need to, and maybe eventually that wall does come down. But I think that, that you get to have those places of, okay, let's practice trust.
Yeah, and a window might be a video chat, a FaceTime call or whatever, because you have a button.
Yeah.
Order canceled, whatever.
Right.
That might be a window.
So, but I just think like those are practical things that could look like building trust with a parent that has discovered, oh, I have caused so much pain.
Yeah.
And I want to change.
Texting and emailing is a little clunky, so don't try to work this out with those.
I wouldn't if you can. So, yeah.
All right.
Well, this is great.
There
I think,
we go.
that rescuer, We talked about lots of things of how not to fall into the trap, so hopefully you're paying attention.
Whole healthy people.
We are whole healthy people because that creates whole healthy families, which are going to save the world.
Come on.
So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to join us next week when Danny and Brittany wrap up the series on the irresponsibility cycle and share some exciting news. Never miss an episode of The KYLO Show by subscribing to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or watch on the Loving on Purpose YouTube channel. And don't forget to submit questions and testimonies to thekyloshow.com. The KYLO Show is produced by Ali Armerding, co-produced by Ashley Beck, Anna Hill, Lee Alexander, and Sherry Silk. Sound engineer and edited by Taylor Silk, and show promoter Christian Zamoran. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.